Hi, my name is Dan Zeilinger, and I have been a world-traveling full-time trad jazz musician for the past 40 years. Some of my most memorable performances were on the lawn of the Edinburgh Castle, at Imperial Palace in Japan, as well as TV shows and commercials across the world. I've met many people during my career and have spent many hours on stage and off with these musicians, talking about jazz, life, and more. Some are touring musicians, some are theme park warriors, and some are casual musicians who play on the weekends with friends. I think they all have stories worthy of a movie script, and through these interviews, I'll be sharing them with you. Hi there, this is Dan Zeilinger at Trad Jazz Today. My next guest is somebody who has got to stop following me around, and I'll explain that in a minute. But a good friend of mine, a great friend of my family's, and we'll get to that in a minute too. But let me tell you that my next guest is somebody very special to all of us, and that's Mr. Joe Jackson. Is that good enough for you?
That's great, man.
Well, I was going to ask you if you wanted me to call you Joseph or not, but I could never make it through an interview saying Joseph over and over and over.
Yeah, I only hear Joseph when I'm in trouble anyway, so.
Yeah, like when I hear Daniel, so I understand.
Exactly.
So if you've scanned a couple of those interviews, you'll know that what I basically do is talk people through their life story. Mm-hmm. And I only reason I use the title Trad Jazz on this title is because for one thing, people don't like to use the word Dixieland anymore.
I didn't know that was a thing. Wow.
Well,
really?
it kind of is, but then again, what isn't? You know?
Yeah, that's sort of the time we're living in right now.
And then the other thing is, I just wanted kind of a hook. So I can have people on here who aren't really dyed-in-the-wool trad players, and I have to explain this every time because it's really funny. I interviewed a trumpet player named Mike Vax, who's a world-renowned lead trumpet player and high note guy and big band guy.
Yeah.
His early beginnings were with Dixieland, and so I explained to everybody they don't have to try and steer the conversations. You know, every other word doesn't have to be trad this or jazz that or anything. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, gotcha.
Make you feel comfortable here.
Oh, good. Oh, okay, I'm good, man.
Now, now I'm going to make you feel uncomfortable again because I research all of my interviews.
Uh-oh.
As much as I can. And like I said in the intro, I want to talk to you about following me around all my life.
Okay.
But first of all, do I understand you were born in Carson?
Well, I was born in Long Beach, at Long Beach Memorial Hospital, and my parents were living in Long Beach at that time, probably north side of Long Beach. And then not soon after that, we moved to Carson. And so I grew up in Carson and spent most of my life there.
So speaking of following me around, actually, my wife used to work at that hospital at one point in time.
Oh, did she really?
So see, it started that early with you and on my family. We can't get away from it. And now,
no, I guess not.
And now you're living in Long Beach again.
Right. Yeah.
Still.
I'm in North Long Beach now. When I got married, my wife and I, we moved to Bellflower for a while. Well, we were there 7 years, as a matter of fact. And then we started looking for a house. And so we found our home here in North Long Beach. And we've been here now for about 4 years.
And I still can't get you to do curlies.
I want to. I'll be honest. I haven't spent enough time. It's been a long time since I've played the tunes. And then I'll say, man, I ought to get out my.
Well, just to let you know, if that ever happens again, they've got a complete book of changes. For everything they play and concert lead sheets. So
nice.
Now that I've told you that, I'm not going to let you play. No. Well, see, the reason I keep asking you, of course, that's where we met. We met at Lunaria originally.
Right. That's
because
right.
you were down there. You were down there and you were a fan of Westie's.
Right.
And I was subbing for him, and you said, "Where's Westie?" And I said, "I'm subbing for him." You said, "Okay, I'm leaving. Bye." And no, I remember you sat in on Basin Street.
Yeah, I got to sit in. I got to sit in on a number of tunes with those guys, and it started. My good, that's been a long time ago, Dan. My goodness,
I'm old.
Yeah, well, I'm not as young as I used to be either. So we're aging beautifully together.
Yes.
But yeah, I remember meeting you at Lunaria. I remember that time very well. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, the band we're talking about is the Beverly Hills Unlisted,
Right.
Conrad Janis's band, and Westy was their tuba and bass player. And whenever Westy couldn't make it back then, I would come in as the sub. Um, Although I didn't play any string bass at that gig because I was smart. And there was a time, Joe, when I used to carry around a string bass and a tuba, and for about 4 months, and a bass sax. And my body said, "No, you're not going to do that anymore." So you went to Hamilton High. Uh-oh, we've got a frozen signal. There, it's coming back.
Oh, there we go. We're back now. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say. So you went to Hamilton High.
I
Wait a minute.
did. Yeah.
Let me say that
Stand
correctly.
by.
You went to Hamilton High School Academy of Music.
Yes, that's correct. Yep. And I graduated in 1997 to give you an idea of my age.
Well,
Yeah.
I graduated high school in 1972 to give you an idea of my age. So you want to let's go ahead. Let's measure ages here and see who comes out.
Dan, I think you win. I think you win gracefully. Yeah,
So
you
that's
win gracefully.
so of course that was the first place we met, and then I used to be the tuba tech at Kennedy High School in La Palma, and Beth followed me in, and you followed her in. Once again, following me around. I have proof.
That's right. Yeah, I spent time at Kennedy, and that was a really wonderful place. Loved the kids and
And Bob is
loved the
great too.
program. Yeah, the whole that was just a wonderful deal all around. And I had to leave Kennedy when I started teaching with Youth Orchestra LA. And man, you want to talk about a difficult decision or difficult choice, because I wanted to stay, but I just couldn't make it work. But yeah, my
Yeah.
goodness, Dan, you're bringing up some old memories.
I'm telling
My
you.
goodness.
I'm
Yeah,
telling you.
wow.
You've been following me around for years now. And then when do I see you next? You're the minister at my son's wedding, for Pete's sake. You had a follow into in my personal life too, and I'm going to get a lawyer on this fast because
Yeah, and followed you all the way up to Northern California.
that's
Yeah,
right.
it was a beautiful drive and a beautiful time. Yeah.
You're just lucky that I'm not interested in antique trains.
There's always room for that, Dan. Yeah,
Well, you
I've
know,
got trains, I've got cars, model cars. Yeah, come on, man.
the trains are proof that you should be a Dixieland player.
I would definitely agree with that. I could
Because
absolutely agree with that.
there are so many Dixieland players into trains, as you know. Ray Cadd, and of course,
Yep.
who was his name with Disney? For
You're not thinking of Ward Kimball, are you?
yeah,
Yeah.
and Ward, of course.
Yeah, Ward Kimball and the Firehouse Five. I listened to a lot of their recordings growing up, and I still listen to the Firehouse Five. But yeah, there are a lot of us. I think there's a correlation between trains because of the rhythm. You know, you hear a steam locomotive chugga 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 chugga, and I go, man, it's like a rhythm section, and the thing is alive. So I think that has something to do with. There's a lot of musicians that I know that are also train geeks. So
Yes.
it's got to be something about rhythm.
Well, your stalking me doesn't end there, because I worked for 12 years at Knott's Berry Farm
Yeah.
as the Dixieland
Yeah.
at Knott's Berry Farm. And who shows up to engineer trains at Knott's Berry Farm? Mr. Joe Jackson.
Yes, sir.
You,
That's right.
isn't this
Well, you've
crazy?
done your research, Dan.
Well,
Yes, it is.
you know, what can I say? When you have somebody, as big and mean as you following me around, you start paying attention.
Oh my goodness.
No, you are probably one of the nicest people I've ever met in
Wow.
my life, and a
Oh,
wonderful,
thank you, Dan.
wonderful friend to my kids, which I don't understand at all. But I'm glad you're laughing. I was wondering how this part of the interview would go.
Oh man, good times. We're gonna have a good time on this interview.
So,
Yeah, we're
of
gonna
course,
have a good time.
now the reason Aaron knew you, of course, is because you went to APU.
Right. Yeah, that's where Aaron and I met, and we got to spend quite a bit of time together working in the wind ensemble, and I think we did some things outside of that as well. We just hung out, that was
Yeah.
we were just we were good friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Just another interesting thing, at least I think so, is the reason Aaron ended up at APU was I was teaching high school, and one of my tuba students at high school wanted to go into a program with a good tuba teacher, and I called up John. Uh,
Ah,
and,
okay.
and, and John
Hmm.
said, well, I'm teaching at 3 different schools right now, so why don't you send your student up to these? And the student decided to go to Chapman, and John goes, no, not with Fred Green. Anyway, and so although my student didn't go, I had called up the music department at APU to talk about this, and
Uh-huh.
my wife goes, ask him about Aaron, ask him what it takes to, and so that's how Aaron ended up at APU, was actually backdoored through John.
Interesting. Yeah,
But
very
I found out
interesting.
that my principal at Canyon High School's wife
Hmm.
was in charge of scholarships at APU,
Oh.
and he was a tuba player, by the way.
See, yes, tuba players are pretty cool people. I gotta say,
Unite.
yeah, yeah, we are pretty cool guys, man, and gals. Yeah, pretty cool guys and gals.
Beth's gonna beat you up if you don't say that.
I know exactly. Yeah, yeah, I
No.
got to get that in there.
So what took you from APU to Cal State Long Beach? What was that transition about, or even USC for that matter?
Well, so hey, this is how it started. So I started off at Cal State Long Beach, and I had always wanted to be at USC, but I started at Cal State Long Beach, and I studied with Doug Turnquist, and Doug was wonderful. I love studying with Doug, and I think Doug, to this day, I think he's one of the finest musicians that I've ever worked with. He's just fantastic. And then I had a chance to audition for SC, and I said, well, I really want to study with Tommy Johnson, and so I transferred I spent about 3 years at Long Beach, and I kind of messed around a little bit. I was more focused on playing than academics. And with a Cal State, you've got a ton of academics you got to get done. And so what happened was I got to about year 3, and I said, let me try to get into SC. And I kept my grades to a point where I could transfer. And so I transferred over to SC. I sent everything in, I auditioned, and then I ended up at USC. And I started out studying with Tommy. I think it was about my first 2.5 years. And then we had kind of an influx of students. And so Tommy says, would anybody like to study with Jim? And I just thought I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I said, well, I'll go. And I think Tommy, um, I don't know. I think he felt maybe a little slighted about it because we had been very close, and we'd come up together. And I, to this day, on my F tuba, I still play a Tommy Johnson model mouthpiece. And so I wasn't a thing that I didn't like Tommy or didn't love Tommy. Tommy was fantastic. And I just wanted a little different perspective on things. And then Jim was doing a lot of stuff in jazz, and I really admired his jazz playing. So I spent my last couple of years with Jim, and it was really good because Jim is a fantastic player, teacher,
Yeah,
and Jim became a very good friend. I
yeah.
mean, there were times Jim would send something my way, and so I went to SC. I finished up there, and then I took about 7 years off before doing my master's work, and it was kind of funny. I've known John Van Houten. John Van Houten and I go all the way back to probably 1997. And I can say that because I was auditioning for All Southern, and John was an adjudicator. And I played for John. And then, later on, I was feeling kind of big about myself. Like, oh, all right, I got into All Southern. Let me call Mr. Van Houten, and I was going to ask him what he thinks of my playing. And it was kind of funny. I called him up and I said, hi, this is Joseph Jackson, and you heard my audition. And what did you think? And the words out of his mouth, well, I didn't think you were much of a tuba player. And there was kind of this silence, and then it was like, okay, bye. And I go, and I'm sitting there, I was 18 years old, 17 years old, and I go, but then he called me back. He goes, hey, I'm sorry. He goes, that may have been a little harsh. Why don't you come over and have a lesson with me? And I said, okay. And so I went over and I had a lesson with John. And at this time, John was living in Long Beach. And he was playing this mirrophone tuba, and he started doing long tones, Dan. And Dan, he was playing so big and so full. Things in his house were vibrating. I think there was a china cabinet or something. It's buzzing, and I'm going, "Oh my God, what is this guy doing?" And so he got me started with the breath builder and these big, loud, long tones and things. And he goes, "Look, in a week, you're going to hear a difference in the way you sound." And sure enough, I practiced and I played those long tones and long tones. And a week later, there was difference, and people have noticed a difference in my sound. And so John had a big impression on me. And then I got to stay with Tommy. But after I took my 7 years away from school, this is funny, Dan. I called up John and almost jokingly said, "Hey, I really ought to get a master's degree." And he's, "Oh, okay, cool." And then we hung up, and John and I, we talked from time to time, and we're all good. We're good friends. So it must have been 2 or 3 days later, John Van Houten calls me and goes, "Hey, I'm working on getting you into either Biola or Long Beach or APU for a master's." And I go, "Huh." I didn't say that over the phone. I go, "Oh my God, he took me seriously." So, so, so then what happened was I went and I went to Biola, and I really liked Biola. I said, I want to try a Christian school to see just something different, because it's a long story of why I didn't stay at SC for my master's degree. But anyhow, at this point, like I say, it's been 7 years since I finished my undergrad, and my undergrad took me, what was my undergrad was like 6 years, maybe 7 years, because of my transfer. When I transferred to SC, almost none of my credits transferred. So with the academics, I almost started from the beginning, but I didn't mind because I was at USC and this and that. But anyhow, I ended up at APU and studied with John. And John was fantastic for me at that point in my life, not only as a tuba teacher, but also as a friend. And I think that's really important, Dan. I think as we talk about our teachers and the people we spent time with, not only were they great musicians or are great musicians, they're great people,
Yeah.
and they're family men. Look at you, and you've got a great family. And coming up with Aaron, I mean, Aaron has just he was so cool, and he still is. So I think there's
He's a slacker.
but yeah, but yeah, man. So anyway, it's interesting how things work out. And I mean, even the fact that we're sitting here chatting now, I mean, Dan, yeah, there was a night, I don't know if you remember this, but years ago we were at Lunaria, and the band went on a break, and I came in and I hung out with you. We wouldn't call it backstage, I guess, but there was the bandstand, and there was a wall, and then there was a room. And that night, I mean, I think we were back eating, what were they serving? Maybe it was gumbo or something, some kind of soup, and we're having drinks and everything. It was such a neat experience, man. Yeah, so it's just, I would have never thought in 20 years, it's been about that long, that we'd be sitting here today having a conversation over Zoom. So
Being
life is
interviewed,
just very
for Pete's sake.
interesting. Yeah,
Hey,
yes, you're being interviewed.
well, I knew it. I mean, you're a talented guy, and when you were sitting in with Conrad's band, I went, "Oh, somebody else to steal my work," you know, which is what I'm always thinking when I hear another tuba player play jazz. It's kind of funny when I was interviewing Eli Newberger, he said, "Dan, have you interviewed Jim yet?" I said, "Well, no." He goes, "Oh yeah, well he loves to play jazz, and he'd be a great interview."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, believe it or not, I've never met him." And kind of the thing with this channel is people
Really?
I've met or played with, and I've never met Jim. Isn't that strange?
That is strange. I would have thought you guys have known each other for a long.
Yeah. So I may have to remedy that
Well, that would be a good connection then. Yeah.
and go knock on his front door or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But we'll figure it out, I'm sure. Let's talk about
Yeah.
you and trains.
Sure.
How did that interest happen?
Oh, now that goes way back to I don't know if I must have been 3 or 4 years old. And Dan, this may sound funny, but I remember this. I was in a car with my parents, and they had stopped at a railroad crossing, and I didn't know anything about trains at that time. I don't even know if I'd ever played with a toy train. but I remember the sound of these locomotives, and they come by and they're going da 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 da, and I go, and I remember it was kind of like that, one of those magical. I go, oh, what is that? And so I perked up in their back seat, and I'm looking, and these trains come across, and we're probably down near Alameda Street in Carson, and there's still a big rail yard there. And that was sort of the genesis of it. And then my preschool teacher, her husband was an engineer, I believe, for Southern Pacific. And Southern Pacific is no longer in existence now. It's been absorbed by the Union Pacific Railroad. But during nap time, when I was supposed to be sleeping, not only was he an engineer, he had all these model trains in his garage. And so I go out, it wasn't every day I'd go out. I could go out and look, and it was like a candy store because they just had trains and trains and trains and trains. And so then I ended up getting some of my own model trains. I think my brother had a train that he wasn't really interested in. And so I ended up with his trains, and it just grew and grew and grew from there. And I started off with HO scale, which is pretty common. There's a lot of HO. It's smaller, but now I have N scale, I have HO scale, Lionel, and most of what I have is G scale. And so that's what you would commonly see if you go to a store around Christmas time and they have a Christmas tree and the train going around. That's LGB or G gauge. And then what was it? Around 11 or 12 years old, I got exposed to Los Angeles Live steamers, and those are trains you can ride on. And a family friend took me out there, and I rode on this train, and I'll never forget it. And I still, to this day, I know the guy that has that train, and he still got it. It's still operating. So I got involved in that. And it's just over time, it's just spurred and spurred and spurred. I joined a number of clubs, and now from knowing people in clubs, I picked up talents, airbrushing, detailing model trains, and it's sort of a side hustle for me. And people bring me stuff, and I put sound systems in. I turn new stuff into old stuff by weathering it or aging it. I worked on the railroad at Knott's Berry Farm for 3.5 years. But what's interesting about Knott's is that I didn't start on the railroad at Knott's. There was one year when they wanted to have, bands at Knott's. And what it
Well, we froze a little bit.
At that time, the other tuba player was, huh?
No, you just froze for a second.
Oh. No, I'm just kidding.
Now, see, I can't tell if you're doing it for real now or not because it's frozen again.
No.
I don't know what's up. Hello? Earth to Joe Jackson. Come in, Joe Jackson.
If that helps.
There you go. That's better.
Okay. Maybe I need to turn off, with COVID-19, we're all on all of our devices all the time. But anyhow, yeah, when I was at Knott's, there was myself, Steve Wilkins, the other tuba player. And that year, we had one big band, and we played in Calico Square 2 or 3 times a day. And then the bands broke off. I was in the band that was in Ghost Town. The other band was over in the Boardwalk. And then on my breaks, I would go over and talk to the guys on the big steam engines over at Knott's Berry Farm. And after a while, I got to know them by name, and we'd hang out, and I'd go for rides in the cab of the engine. And then that next year, I came back and I started working on the railroad at Knott's. And so I did that, like I say, about 3.5 years. And then I kind of wanted to do something else. And along with working on the railroad at Knott's, I was still playing music and teaching. And then I decided, well, maybe it's time to do something a little bit different. So one of the guys that I had met at Knott's and we worked together, he had moved on to Disney, and we talked, and he goes, man, you got to come over to Disney, and the hours are better, the money's better, this and that. But it was a different kind of vibe because at Knott's, there are no unions. So the railroad, I mean, you could be working on the steam engine one day, and then the next day they say, look, we need you to come over and help us. And you're in maintenance over there. So they say, well, we need you to come over and help us at Ghost Rider. You go over and help. But that was kind of neat. But anyway, I ended up before I got to Disney, I worked at the Grove Shopping Center in LA, and there's a streetcar there. And I ended up there working on the streetcar. I did that for about a year, a little over a year, maybe 2 years. I don't really remember, but I ended up at the Grove, and then Disney. I interviewed for Disney, and they go, "We'd love to have you, but it's going to be probably 5 or 6 months before we can bring anybody new in." And I go, "Oh man." But anyway, I stayed in contact with them, and finally they offered me a job at Disney, and I took that. And I spent 14 years on the Disneyland Railroad, and that was fun and challenging. And at Disneyland, here's another tuba player story. That's where I started hanging out with John DeRaco,
Sure.
and I just I love John, and then also Westy from time to time would show up at Disneyland as a sub. And I remember going out and I heard him one day, and we started meeting Westy at Disney. That was the genesis of sort of Lunaria, because he said, "Look, I'm subbing here today, but you come up to this place I play Lunaria, and you can hang out and listen to me and this and that and the other." So that was how I ended up at Lunaria, was meeting Westy at Disneyland. So it's just interesting how it's all went down. But I left Disney in 2018 to pursue music performance and teaching full time. I was working a lot of between Disney and gigging and teaching. I was probably working 50, 60 hours a week. And then think about all the time I spent on the road. And it just got to be dangerous, and so I had to give up something. And so I decided after 14 years at Disney, I would leave Disney and then just go after music full time. And that was in 2018. So up until 2020, things were going pretty good. I was teaching, I was gigging, and then this, here we are now. Things have slowed down a bit, but I still got a lot of great things going on. The fact that you and I are sitting here having this discussion, this is great. This is so cool, Dan. So anyway, I still very much am a train geek. I have trains all over the place. Ask my wife; she'll tell you. Both of my kids are into trains.
Well, I've
So
seen
we do
I've seen the
train
pictures you've
things.
posted. That I saw that you've been infecting your kids early on the train thing, um, because you
Yeah.
post you post like when you went up to, I guess you went up to Sacramento, went to the trains up there and saw the, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We did the California State Railroad Museum. That was a few years ago, and then there's a wonderful scale model railroad up there called the Redwood Valley Railway, and it's excuse me, it's up in Tilden Park, and we've done that one. My youngest son, he hasn't seen a lot of that, but my oldest, we've done so much train stuff. And I'm just doing what the Bible says. The Bible says, train up a child in the way he should go. So that's why I'm showing them all the train.
Oh, that's wonderful. But I know in your heart that you're a jazz player, a Dixieland jazz player, because I went to your recital, and you were playing jazz flavored stuff at your recital, and I know. By the way, I have all my notes here. Talk to Joe about the food at his recital, because if you can still hear me, because I don't think I've
I
ever
can hear
seen.
you.
I've never seen a feed like that as somebody seeing your recital, babe. I got to tell you here. That was amazing, and
Well,
they couldn't tear me away from that buffet.
because I got one of my cousins involved in that, and she was sort of I don't know if you'd call her a party planner, or I guess she was, because she organized all the food. And I said, well, I think we'll do this thing and that thing, and we'll have some of my favorites. And I was hoping to have a lot of people come to the recital. So I said, we're going to need a lot of food. And she really just delivered and took care of things. And I mean, my mom pitched in and cooked some things. We had certain things that were picked up. And it was a feast. Yeah. And I said, well, I really want people to come out. I want them to enjoy my recital, and then not only enjoy the recital, but hang out afterwards. Cause I love people, and I loved running my mouth. So, it was fun, but it was just awesome being around so many of my friends and colleagues, and then be able to share the gift of music. And after you share the gift of music, what else is there better than a great meal and a great hang? Or some people say, man, forget about the music. I just want to go to the hang. Um, you know,
Well, it's interesting you brought up that point, and you brought it up earlier. Actually, you probably didn't know it, but a big part of getting a gig is the friendships,
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
and being able to handle a large group of people and be cool with everybody. Students, they don't teach that.
No. Mm-mm. No, and that's it's kind of when you really think about it, I think our education, our music education, there's certain things we ought to be taught about in school, and we don't get it. I mean, we're focusing on, you know, I was in school, and you know, you learn excerpts and you learn etudes and these things and that thing, but you really need to know something about music business,
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
you know, and how do you deal with that? Because there are some fantastic players in the world, and there's some young players that are absolutely just, I mean, they're gonna, if they keep working the way they're working, they're gonna surpass me real soon. But a lot of them, you know, they know.
And you'll hear somebody go, "Oh crap, they're going to get my work," just like I did with you.
It just keeps recurring, right? It just keeps coming back. But yeah, but yeah, I just, social skills, Dan, they're so important. And you know, I think it's important that we learn how to be friends with each other and learn how to share. I think tuba players, it seems like, and I'm not trying to be mean or funny, but it seems like tuba players are usually more open to sharing ideas about things, and we just get along well. Whereas I think there's, and I'm not going to say any specific instrument, you know, I'm not about to get in trouble, but I think there's some, you know, players that they just aren't as open to sharing with things. I've had string player friends say, "Man, I love hanging out with you brass guys. You guys are so cool." And I go, "Well, yeah, you know, we are pretty cool."
Yeah,
But
as long as you're not a lead trumpet player. But I was one originally, you know.
really, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah,
I
up
knew you
until
were a
I
trumpet player. Yeah.
up until I got to college, I was a high note guy. Um, but the talent is so deep in Southern
Yeah,
California.
it really is.
It
It really
really
is.
is, and it's kind of funny. I mean, exactly what you say is true. Um, is that the hang's important, the friendships are important, and that's what I miss the most actually,
Hmm.
since March. Although I love playing for audiences and I love playing, it's it's the personalities I miss the most. It's this that I
Right.
miss, which is why I started this channel in March. Actually, it was Aaron's idea, actually.
See, I told you he was cool.
But back to the coolness factor. Why
Yeah.
do you think he went from trumpet to French horn at APU? He couldn't handle that trumpet hang.
You know, it's funny. I've always thought Aaron was a horn player. So
No,
I just learned something new. I didn't know he started off in trumpet.
Joe didn't know you were a trumpet player first. He's sitting
Yeah.
right here.
And well, and here's another one on that. I started on trumpet also. I didn't start on tuba. And just a quick, I'll try and make this story quick. My wife says I'm long-winded, but I didn't really want to play the trumpet. My brother had a trumpet, so we had one in the house, and I went to Curtis Middle School in Carson, and that's where I picked up. Actually, I started in music at Annalee Avenue, also in Carson. I'll tell you, my elementary school and my middle school, they were basically 2 blocks apart, if that. Actually, the Annalee Avenue is here, and then you had just a block apart. It was Annalee, and then it was Curtis Middle School. But at Curtis, I had the trumpet. I had started at Annalee singing, and then I had a little bit of time on the trumpet. Got to Curtis, played the trumpet, and I wasn't really into it. And then in those days we had challenges, and so there was a young lady and her name was Tracy Scott, or is Tracy Scott. I don't know where she is today or what she's doing, but back in the day, I go, no problem. Tracy challenged me, Dan, and Dan, this girl, she didn't just play better than me. I mean, she just mopped the floor with me playing. I mean, just mop the floor, the walls, everything else. And I go, oh my goodness. I ended up in last chair trumpet. But then
Oh,
I started glancing at the tuba, and I've got this thing about big things. I'm a big guy. Trains, they're big. Before trains, I think it was trucks. I used to always watch cement trucks and trash trucks as a kid, and those kind of, and they're still cool to me.
fire engines.
Yeah, I just anything. And so and then I said, let me try this tuba. And here's the thing. I said, I bet the tuba's easier to play than the trumpet. Big mistake. Whoever said that? None of these instruments are easy. But I picked up the tuba and I can make a sound on it right away. And that was it. I was hooked. And I didn't have to worry about Tracy anymore beating me up on the trumpet. But that's how I got my start on from I was like I say trumpet and then to tuba, and I've been with tuba ever since. And I've seen you play trumpet and tuba on things. And I'm going, how do you do that, man? Because I think about my buzz here for the tuba, and then I go and they go from tuba to trumpet. So you were like a mini phenomenon to me, man. I'm going, how
Well,
does he do that?
see, I had a high school teacher who never told me that I wasn't supposed to be able to do that. In fact, it was just the opposite. I was always around the music department. I actually went to Marina High School in Huntington Beach,
Mm-hmm.
and I've dabbled with like any kids who's possessed with music, which I obviously have been all my life. I started playing other instruments and stuff. So he saw this happening, and so I my senior year, I got all my solids out of the way during the summer before. And my senior year, I played trombone in beginning band, French horn and flute in orchestra,
Oh
trumpet
wow.
in concert band, tuba in symphonic band, and I played trap sets in jazz band.
My goodness.
And just because my teacher would come and he goes, "Hey Dan, we need a French horn orchestra. Are you up for it?" And I go, "Sure." And then when I got to college, my first experience was Orange Coast College with all kinds of heavies.
Mm-hmm.
I walked in and the teacher said, You doing what? you can't do that."
Right.
So I went, "Oh, okay." Anyway, that's my story with that.
Wow.
I appreciate it. I tell you where I really ran into trouble. Going from trumpet to tuba wasn't a problem. Going to the tenor mouthpiece in between it was an issue. I
Mm-hmm.
played for 2 years in the Cuban band playing high note trumpet and trombone,
Wow.
and that killed me just because the mouthpieces were so close. After the embouchure kept slipping between the sizes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and then I finally got smart and came all the way over to the dark side. I teach everything, but I play tuba.
That's all right. Well, that's a talent within itself. I mean, I pretty much I've tried a few other instruments. I tried trombone a little bit. I can play euphonium, sort of. I'm not I still sound like a tuba player when I play euphonium, and I just never really got into a whole bunch of things. And I do sing a little bit, mostly at church, and I'm on the worship leader team,
Uh huh.
and so I help out with that. But I don't know. I kind of think every other thing you do, it actually contributes to your primary instrument because you're making music. And maybe if I think for me, I used to think about a lot of things vocally. When I was in high school, I did choir, and at first well, I'll just be honest. At first I did choir. I go, well, there are a lot of girls in choir, so that'll be great. Yeah, and then but it was
It's why I joined Latin club in high school. Anyway.
yeah, hey, we had that thing going on, and there were a lot of girls in choir, but at Hamilton there was such a variety of people, and so it was wonderful because of the camaraderie of the time together. But then there were some really talented instrumentalists there, and vocalists, and so I could listen and hear. I'll go, oh wow, listen to what this person is doing. But choir actually helped me learn a lot about how to control my air, and it helped me learn a lot about phrasing. And so I'm still a big, believer in singing. And some of my students, they just, they go, oh my
Oh,
God, we got to
but
sing
see, the
again.
thing is, Joe, as I'm not telling you anything new here, but I'm telling anybody who's watching that doesn't know this, being able to hear the pitch before you play it is so important with, instrumentalists. And if you come from a singing background, then you understand, for one thing, you understand vocal placement, which also applies to what we do as wind players. You know,
Right.
it's It's all one and the same, and it's kind of like cross training as an athlete. You know, when you
Yeah.
see people who run who then also swim and bicycle in order to keep in shape, that's exactly what it's like when you're doing multi-disciplines of music. You know.
It is, yeah, and those things. It's just amazing how they relate. And I find myself often in life now as I'm doing things or as I hear something out in the world, I go, oh, wait, that kind of sounds like this, or it reminds me of this piece, or, oh, I think I heard this. And what about this sound? And so I just think those are all components, or you hear a great singer. For instance, I was listening to the memorial service for John Lewis this morning, and I don't remember her name, but there was a woman who got on there and sang, and it was just fantastic. And you can pull from all these sources and apply it to the tuba or the trombone or the trumpet or the piano, whatever you do. There's just it's just limitless input if we listen. I think I read a book about Mahler and how he loved nature. And sometimes, I'll go outside early in the mornings and I'm listening to the birds or to the wind rustling the leaves, and everything is just input for music making. And so I kind of think even there's people that have written pieces about like the city of Los Angeles, and where you hear lots of car horns and motors and things like that. And I go, but I heard a piece and I go, I can dig that because I can relate. And I think, Dan, with music, one thing is it has to be relatable to the listener all the time. And therefore, we as performers, we have to be relatable. We have to have heard this or heard that, and then we can put that into what we're playing or performing. So it's just really interesting, man. All this input. Um,
I agree. Now let's cut through all of this BS, man, because because I've been doing the math here, and
uh-oh.
and the math says you love jazz, you love trains,
Mm-hmm.
and you can sing. What are you doing with this symphonic crap? I mean, come on. There's only one tuba player in a symphony, and if you're gonna
Oh,
if you're gonna survive and try to put some money in your wallet for your family, Dixieland gigs, baby. I'm telling you.
it's funny, Dan. I've thought about this a lot, and as we're on this today, John Noreko and we were talking about this a week or so ago. I guess with me, I've loved jazz for I can't tell you for how long. And as far as Dixieland jazz, I like to think of it Dixieland or trad jazz. There used to be a guy on K Jazz, and he would come on Sunday mornings. I think
Yeah,
his name
he
was
still does it actually.
yeah, it's Johnny Magnus, I think
Yeah,
now, and he's in that time slot. But I remember turning on K Jazz one time and hearing a tuba player playing jazz, and I go, whoa, 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 wait a minute, what is this? And that's what it really spurred my interest in Dixieland jazz, traditional jazz. And I hadn't heard anybody play bebop. It wasn't until probably you hear guys like Howard Johnson or Jim, they were doing bebop.
sure.
But I was really into Dixieland, and I think it's because I like old things. I love steam trains. I mean, we can
Yeah,
go back to early 1800, mid 1800s and talk about steam locomotives.
sure.
But there was just something about that sound. So, I went to college and I got my training in classical music. I do love the symphony orchestra, but you're right. The number one, a big time symphony job is, and especially now with what has happened in our world, it's going to be amazing to see who survives, which
Exactly.
orchestras survive. I think, yeah, LA Phil, probably no problem. They're going to
Yeah.
survive. But for a job like LA Phil, there's going to be 50, 60, 70, 80 people show up for one spot. And what it means is that there's very little, the probability of me winning a big symphony job, even if I go in and play my absolute greatest, play my tail off, play the best audition I've ever played in my life, is still very slim.
Yeah.
And I've accepted that. So I do a bunch of different things, and I need to sit down and I really need to learn. Now, I've heard a lot of tunes, but as far as the structures of jazz, I've never really studied it like I need to. But when I do,
You just have to feel it.
yeah, yeah, I think for me,
Joe, hey,
Yeah.
before you go on,
Uh-huh.
to interrupt rudely as I always do, learn I got rhythm changes, ain't misbehaving, and a 12-bar blues, and you've got three-quarters of the gig.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can do that,
Circle
you
of
know?
fourths, you got your circle of fifths down, and then you're groovy. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't. I'm just saying that it's not as complicated as a lot of symphonic musicians think it is. I was playing a guest shot with the Banjo Mania group I used to play with. We were doing the Riverside Symphony,
Yeah.
and we were sitting in the green room just jamming on something, and a crowd of tuxedoed musicians go, "How do you guys do that?" It's not that mysterious. It really isn't. Anyway,
Yeah, but no, for me, it's funny. Years ago, someone asked me, they say, Joe, if you had to do one thing in music for the rest of your life, what would it be? And I said, um, I go, I really, really would like to have a job in a symphony. But if I couldn't have a symphony job, put me in a great Dixieland jazz band for the rest of my life, and I would be happy. And I still feel that's true. I mean, I have spent a huge part of my life studying classical music, and at this point in life, I'm not going to say I'm bored with it, but I know that there's a lot of other things,
yeah.
and jazz and stuff. I don't listen to now. My friends that know me as the symphony musician are probably going to shun me for this, but I don't listen to classical music every day. Although KUSC is on my favorites list,
Yes.
what I can guarantee you is every single day of the week I listen to K jazz. And if it's not K jazz, I've listened to. I had to spend. You'll love this, Dan. I spent a big portion of time just getting into Miles Davis, and it was kind of weird because for a while I go, everybody talks about Miles and yada 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 and this and that, but it's almost as if Miles and I, Miles Davis music and I were in a relationship. And I had a period where I wanted to listen to Miles all the time. And I wanted to, and I go, my goodness, he plays melodies so well. And so what I started doing is I would bring jazz music into my classical lessons and I would say, listen to this or listen to that. And so I go, huh? I go, did you hear the way he phrased that? And I go, kind of blue. And I'm like, you hear My Funny Valentine? You hear his solo? You hear what he did here? And people are looking at me going, well, Joe, you're nuts, man. You're going to teach. I'm going, great music is just great music. And great musicians, it doesn't matter what form they're playing. It's a great musician. And so you can learn something. So I haven't given up, Dan. I think that I need to sit down and I need to work out those things and really just get into the playing and find something to do that I really like.
Yeah.
And,
Unfortunately, I have to start wrapping this up a little bit.
oh, man.
I
Okay.
know. Well, we can do it again, and there's so much to be. There's so much more to do, and I think we will
I'd love to.
if you're up for it. But I
Yes.
wanted to point you towards one of the interviews I did with a guy named Tamás Istas, who's a Hungarian, and he's a Hungarian who teaches violin at the university in Kecskemét, Hungary,
Wow.
and he started the Bohem Ragtime Orchestra, and now they're a full-on jazz band. But he talks
Wow.
about the interrelationship, what he learned from jazz that he applies to his classical playing, and back and forth. And you're hitting on a lot of the subjects he talked about. But check that out on the interviews, and
I
you'll
will.
enjoy that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man.
And let's do this again. I want to talk about teaching and Miles and all of this stuff because it's a subject worth pursuing.
Well, I'd be happy to do this again, Dan. This is I just find this time that we're in and we're able to do these kinds of things. I think it's so cool, and I would love to come back and Dan, I can talk forever, man. So just let me know when again.
Oh,
I'll turn the microphone on.
All you have to do is fill out that calendar again as far as when your availability is, and
Okay.
Aaron will book you again.
Great.
You know Corey Gem?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, he's like the #1 jazz cornetist in Southern California now, and
Okay.
I wouldn't be kicking you off except for the fact that I have him in like 9 minutes. So
Hey, that if I can accept getting kicked off for a guy that sounds that cool.
but as I said at the beginning of it, myself and my family loves you, And
Likewise, love you guys too.
Get on that calendar, and we'll do this again.
Sounds great, Dan. You can count on it.
All right, Joe, you take care.
You too. Take care. Thanks a lot, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Trad Jazz Today. Dan shows new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Make sure to check out the archive of past shows, and please give us a thumbs up when you subscribe to the channel. Bye.